It intersects. I actually wouldn't say it intersects, because intersects means they're going across one another. I would say they coalesce. They're actually running parallel. And the reason for that is the electric universe people are generally of the belief system that electrical forces dominate the nature of the solar system and the galaxies and such. And our view, or my view, is that electrical forces are so critical for everything that happens, not only in water, but in all of the applications of water. And one of them is weather. So our studies on weather is basically water, right? Clouds are made of water, and if you get rain, that's what we mean pretty much by weather. Either it rains or it doesn't rain, and rain comes in all kinds of exotic forms. But the feature of weather that we have brought forth is that weather is primarily electrical. You can take a little droplet of anything and you can compute the terminal velocity. You could take, for example, yourself, and you jump off the top of a building, and based on your size and shape and height and everything, you can compute, you'll start accelerating and you reach a terminal velocity. So it's very easy to calculate the terminal velocity. And scientists have done that for raindrops. And the rain comes down, you know the size and the material, and you can compute the terminal velocity. But someone actually measured it with a high-speed camera. It was published in the journal Nature about 8 or 9 years ago. And it turns out that the speed exceeds that expectation by a factor, in some cases, by almost 10 times. So it means that the droplet is not just falling from the cloud, something is pulling the droplet down. And from our studies, we deduced that these are electrical forces because these droplets are all charged. And it's known that if you have a cloud and the cloud is above the Earth, what happens is that the charge in the cloud induces opposite charge on the Earth. And the two are pulled together because you have negative, positive, and they're pulled. And so this is so fundamental as to the basis why it rains and how it rains. It's fundamental to the centrality of weather. So, and another point underlying the importance of electrical forces in weather is a question that I don't know if you ever thought of, but how come the clouds are floating in the sky? A lot of people just look up and they see the cloud. They never really think about it. Well, the clouds are full of water. Someone computed the weight of that water in a cumulonimbus cloud. These are one of these giant clouds. I can't remember the number, but he computed the weight of all that water that's in the cloud. And you can compute it in kilograms of weight, but then you don't really get a sense. He computed it in elephants, number of elephants, equivalent weight of elephants. And it turned out it was like, I think it was like 15 million elephants or something like that. And so if you have clouds that are full of effectively elephants, the question is, what keeps those elephants up in the clouds? And the answer is that it has to do with charge, just like the electric universe people are realizing. And sometimes, you find stacks of clouds. You'll have a low cloud and a medium cloud and a high cloud. It's really hard to understand, except if you understand that these clouds come from different directions, from different systems, and they may contain different amounts of charge. So it's perfectly understandable that the clouds will sit at different heights. So I think, getting back to your question, the phenomena of weather fits so well with the phenomena of what's going on in the solar system and what's going on in the universe. We talk about space weather, and we talk about local weather on Earth, and the two actually are quite parallel. I like to use the flat Earth analogy. Suppose you suppose you come through, suppose the whole world of scientists knows that the Earth is flat, and you come with a new hypothesis, the Earth is round, and you say, wow, I have some preliminary evidence. I've seen some satellite pictures. It kind of looks like a sphere, and I've taken off from Phoenix, and I've gone west to San Francisco, and then to Tokyo, and on to Rome, and to London, and to New York, and back to Phoenix again. And I was looking for the edge of the Earth, the edge of the flat Earth. I had trouble finding it. And so I'm thinking that, that it looks like the Earth is round. So you want to get a grant to study this because it's pretty important. And you go to, say, the National Science Foundation, and you say, I have all of this interesting evidence on a topic that's so fundamental and so important. I want to get some more money so I can study, to see. And and the gatekeeper at the National Science Foundation said, oh, this looks, pretty interesting, and I better get the experts, the super experts in the shape of the Earth to come and judge this grant application because it looks so important. Well, who are those super experts? They're all the flat Earth people. Now, you'd think, as scientists, that they're going to look at your application and say, oh, this is fantastic. This is so interesting that it looks as though the Earth may be round. But wait a second. If she's right, my career is in jeopardy because, I built my career on the little bumps and discontinuities and such on the flat Earth, and I'm the world's expert. If she's right, I'm finished. So what is my reaction going to be to this grant application? Well, we're sorry, but there are a few problems with this application, and it's not quite good enough. Go home and try again. And all of my colleagues around the table, who are the other world's experts in the shape of the flat Earth, are tremendously relieved because they don't want to have to contend with this round Earth idea. We're feeling mighty comfortable in our level of supremacy, of being at the top of the field of the flat Earth. And the last thing we want is to be displaced. So we're talking about human nature. There are solutions to the problem. One of the ways of solving the problem, which we've devised, we've put together an institute. It's called the Institute for Venture Science, and the way it exists is if you have your round Earth idea in a flat Earth environment, those are exactly the kinds of applications that we want to receive for funding to this institute. So we send your application out to review from open-minded people who don't care whether the Earth is round or flat. They want to see science progress. So there's none of this mafia kind of environment. And then if you get a good review, if you're able to defend yourself against the people who will tend to discredit your idea, and you get a high enough score, then we will attempt to fund your project. But you see, funding your project doesn't really do it, because the more evidence that you get, the more your opponents will dig their heels in and make sure you don't succeed. It's not in their best interest for you to succeed, you see. So I thought for years, how do you get around that problem? And it's a really serious problem, because once they say you're a crackpot, and a bunch of them say pretty much the same thing, it's really hard for you to stand up and say, no, I'm not a crackpot, right? It doesn't work that way. So we think we've solved this problem, and we solve the problem by, if we fund your round Earth idea, we're going to look for up to a dozen other laboratories around the world who also think that the Earth might actually be round. And each one is studying independently using a different method. And next year, you have a dozen people coming to the annual meeting of the Shape of the Earth Society. And suddenly a dozen people are reporting that the Earth is round. Now, they can't all be crackpots. And so our sense is that when there's a critical mass of people, not just one, but a critical mass of people who have clear evidence and they confront the establishment people, it won't be long before the world out there picks up that, you know, it looks like they've got something interesting going on there, and it won't be more than perhaps a few years before there's a shift of paradigm, which basically, if it's an important enough issue, amounts to a scientific revolution. We want to encourage and precipitate scientific revolutions. The obstacles are really less scientific, but more personal, sociological, psychological, you might say. And we're hoping that this new institute that we've put together, and we're looking for donors to help support these grants that we would like to give out. We have a dozen from 200 pre-proposals that have been submitted. We picked out a dozen really promising ones that we would like to fund on many different topics in science. And we're looking for donors, and we think this is going to make a big difference in restoring science to the revolutionary process that it was, say, 100 years ago, when practically every year something new and exciting was coming forth. It's called the Institute for Venture Science, and the URL is IVSCI, IVSCI, that's it for science, ivsci.org. It's all there. Thank you.